By the time the first scream cut through the neon-soaked streets of Seoul, no one noticed the black waitress wiping grease from her hands in a back alley. No one except the terrified 7-year-old tied inside a van, and the men who thought fear would keep her silent. She had nothing. No power, no money, no protection, not even a reason to be brave, except the sound of a child crying in the dark. What followed was a single night that shattered an entire city. A hunted woman running through subway tunnels with a kidnapped boy in her arms, criminal syndicates turning Seoul into a cage, and a mafia boss so feared that men bowed without being asked, brought to his knees by a stranger who refused blood money and chose kindness instead. This is the story of how one invisible woman stood between the underworld and its most precious heir, how courage outran guns and empires, and how a waitress who should have walked away became the reason a mafia king learned what fear really feels like, losing a child and finding his humanity. By the time the neon lights flickered on along Itaewon Street, Amara Okoye had already been on her feet for 11 hours. Her black uniform clung to her back with sweat, the smell of grease and dishwater woven permanently into the fabric. The restaurant was loud, too loud, plates clattering, customers laughing, Korean pop music thumping from a speaker no one ever bothered to fix. To everyone else, it was just another night. To Amara, it was survival. Waitress, a man snapped, fingers clicking in the air as if calling a dog. She turned instantly, forcing a polite smile that never quite reached her eyes. Yes, sir. The man barely looked at her. This soup is cold. Amara glanced down. Steam still rose from the bowl. I'm sorry, sir. I'll replace it immediately. He scoffed. Hurry. I don't have all night. She bowed slightly, the way she'd learned she had to, and took the bowl away. As she walked toward the kitchen, she felt the familiar tightening in her chest, the mix of humiliation and exhaustion she swallowed every single day. In Korea, she was invisible when it mattered, and painfully visible when it didn't. Foreign, black, poor. Those three things followed her like shadows. She had come to Seoul 3 years earlier with dreams that now felt naive. She'd imagined opportunity, growth, something better than the quiet hunger she'd known growing up. Instead, she found long shifts, shared rooms, and a city that never stopped reminding her she didn't belong. Still, she endured, because quitting wasn't an option. Because back home, her younger brother depended on the money she sent. Because hope, once broken, was hard to rebuild. By 11:47 p.m., the dinner rush slowed. The restaurant owner disappeared into his office. The cooks smoked by the back door. Amara wiped down tables in silence, counting minutes in her head. Just 30 more. 30 minutes, and she could go home. She stepped outside to dump a bag of trash, the cold air biting at her skin. The alley behind the restaurant was narrow and dim, lit only by a flickering bulb that buzzed like an insect about to die. Garbage bags lined the walls. The smell was sharp and sour. Amara tied the trash bag, ready to turn back. Then she heard it. A sound so faint she almost convinced herself it wasn't real. A whimper. She froze. The city was full of noises, sirens, drunk laughter, engines, but this sound didn't belong to any of them. It was small, fragile, human. Amara tilted her head, listening. There it was again. A child's cry. Her heart began to pound. She scanned the alley. Empty. Too empty. The sound seemed to come from farther down, near the dumpsters at the far end. Her first instinct was fear. Seoul wasn't kind at night, especially not to women alone. Especially not to women like her. Not your problem, her mind whispered. Walk away. She took one step back toward the restaurant door. Then the cry came again. Sharper this time, muffled, as if someone were trying to silence it. Amara stopped breathing. She thought of her brother at that age. Thought of small hands, wide eyes, the way children trusted adults to keep them safe. Thought of what it meant to hear a child cry and choose to ignore it. Slowly, against every survival instinct she had learned, she turned around. Hello, she called softly. No answer. Her phone trembled in her hand as she switched on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating trash, old boxes, a rusted shopping cart. Then she saw it. A black van parked crookedly at the end of the alley. The engine was off. The windows were dark. Another sound came from inside. Amara's stomach dropped. She approached carefully, each step measured, heart hammering so loud she was sure someone would hear it. The closer she got, the clearer the sound became. Crying. She reached the back of the van. The door was slightly ajar. Her hand shook as she pulled it open. Inside, huddled between torn blankets and rope, was a little boy. He couldn't have been more than 7. His face was streaked with tears, his lips trembling, his small body curled in on itself like he was trying to disappear. A strip of tape had been ripped from his mouth, dangling uselessly from his cheek. His wrists were red where rope had bitten into his skin. When the light hit him, his eyes snapped open, wide, terrified, dark. He screamed, "Hey! Hey! No! No!" Amara whispered urgently, panic surging through her. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The boy shrank back, shaking violently. Amara raised both hands, lowering herself slowly so she wouldn't seem threatening. "My name is Amara," she said softly, speaking English, then broken Korean. "I help. I promise." The boy stared at her, tears spilling faster. "Yama," he whispered. "Mom." Amara's throat burned. She reached for the rope around his wrists and hesitated. "Can I?" she asked gently. The boy nodded. Her fingers worked quickly, loosening the knots. As soon as his hands were free, he clutched her sleeve with surprising strength, as if letting go would mean death. "It's okay," she whispered again, though she wasn't sure it was true. "You're safe now." But even as she said it, a cold realization settled in her chest. Children didn't end up tied in vans by accident. Someone had done this. Someone dangerous. Amara glanced up at the alley entrance, and her breath caught. Footsteps echoed in the distance. Male voices, laughing, coming closer. The boy stiffened, fear flooding his face. He grabbed her tighter, shaking his head wildly. "No," he whispered. "Please." Amara's mind raced. Whoever those men were, they were coming back. And if they found her here, she swallowed hard, pulling the boy closer to her chest. In that moment, standing in a dark alley behind a restaurant that barely paid her, Amara Okoye made a choice that would change her life forever. She wasn't a hero. She wasn't trained. She wasn't powerful. She was just a waitress who refused to look away. And somewhere in the city, far beyond that alley, a mafia boss who ruled the underworld had no idea his entire world was about to collide with hers. The voices grew louder. Amara pressed her back against the cold metal of the van, her body instinctively shielding the boy. The alley suddenly felt smaller, tighter, like the walls were closing in on them. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, so loudly she was afraid the men would hear it. The boy, Min-jae, she would later learn, buried his face into her uniform, gripping her like she was the only solid thing left in the world. "Shoo," Amara whispered, forcing her voice to stay steady. "Don't make a sound." She peered toward the alley entrance. 2 shadows stretched across the ground first, then 3. Men, big ones. Their laughter bounced off the walls, careless and cruel, the kind that came from people who had never feared consequences. "Told you the kid wouldn't go anywhere," one of them said in Korean. "Relax. Who's dumb enough to mess with us?" another replied. Amara's stomach twisted. Me, she thought. Apparently. Her mind raced through options, each one worse than the last. Run? Impossible. Min-jae was too small and too scared. Hide. There was nowhere left. Fight. She almost laughed at the idea. She was unarmed, outnumbered, trapped. The footsteps stopped. "Hey," a voice said sharply. "The van." Amara's blood turned to ice. The man stepped closer. She could smell cigarette smoke now, hear the scrape of boots against concrete. The van door, the door she'd opened, was still ajar. "Was it open before?" another man asked. Amara tightened her arms around the boy. Her heart screamed for her to run, but her body refused to move. Then she did the only thing she could think of. She slammed the van door shut. The sound echoed through the alley like a gunshot. "Ichiwai," one of the men shouted. Without thinking, Amara grabbed Minjae and ran. She sprinted down the alley in the opposite direction, her shoes slipping on wet concrete, lungs burning as she pushed herself faster than she ever had before. Behind her, shouts erupted. "Get them! Stop her!" Adrenaline took over. She turned a corner, nearly crashing into a pile of crates, and ducked behind them just as a hand reached out, missing her by inches. Minjae clung to her neck, sobbing silently. Amara crouched low, holding her breath as the men rushed past, cursing, their footsteps pounding like war drums. She waited, counted heartbeats, then bolted the other way, weaving through side streets she barely knew. She didn't stop running until her chest felt like it would split open. They ducked into an abandoned stairwell beneath an old apartment building, shadows swallowing them whole. Amara collapsed against the wall, gasping for air, her arms still locked around the boy. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Minjae looked up at her, his eyes red and swollen. They come back?" he asked softly, his Korean trembling. Amara shook her head, though she wasn't sure. "Not now," she said. "You're safe. I promise." She wished promises were enough. She checked his wrists again, bruised but no longer bleeding. Her hands shook as the reality of what she had done began to settle in. She had just stolen something from criminals. A child. A very important child, judging by the way those men had reacted. "Minjae," she said gently, brushing dirt from his hair. "Do you know who those men were?" He shook his head quickly. "They took me," he whispered. "From school. They said my father didn't listen." Amara's heart skipped. "Your father?" Minjae nodded. "He's busy. He has many men. Many cars." Something cold slid down Amara's spine. "Many men. Many cars." She swallowed. "Is your father a businessman?" The boy hesitated, then shrugged. People bowed to him. Amara closed her eyes briefly. This was worse than she thought. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, but none came close enough to matter. Amara considered calling the police, but fear gripped her. What if the police were involved? What if the kidnappers found her before help arrived? She had seen enough in this city to know that power moved faster than justice. "We need to move," she said finally, standing up. "We can't stay here." She pulled off her apron, wrapped it around Minjae like a cloak, and lifted him onto her back. He was light, too light. They slipped back onto the street, blending into the late-night crowd. Neon signs flickered. Drunk couples laughed. Life went on, unaware that a war had just begun. As they walked, Minjae whispered, "Why did you help me?" Amara didn't answer right away. Because she had nothing to gain. Because she had everything to lose. "Because someone should," she said at last. They reached a small convenience store, and Amara ducked inside, buying a bottle of water and a sandwich with the last of her cash. Minjae ate slowly, like he wasn't used to being allowed to. As he ate, Amara's phone buzzed. An unknown number. Her breath caught. She didn't answer. Then another buzz. And another. A message appeared. "Where is the boy?" Amara's hands went numb. They had her number. Her mind screamed questions. How? When? She hadn't called anyone. She hadn't told anyone. Her phone buzzed again. "Return him. You will be paid." Minjae looked up, sensing the change in her. "Are they angry?" he asked. Amara forced a smile. "No," she lied. "They're just loud." Another message came. "Running will make it worse." Her heart pounded. They weren't just kidnappers. They were organized, powerful, and now they knew she existed. Amara stepped outside, scanning the street. A black sedan idled across the road. Another farther down. Too clean. Too still. They were watching. She took Minjae's hand and walked, slowly, calmly, straight past them, her pulse racing. The boy squeezed her fingers tightly. She didn't look back, but she felt it. The shift in the air, the sense of being hunted. High above the city, in a penthouse filled with men who feared him, Chairman Kong stared at surveillance screens, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. His son was gone. and a foreign woman now stood between him and the people who had taken everything from him. He didn't know her name yet, but he would. And the city of Seoul was about to learn what happened when a mafia boss's only son was taken and saved by the wrong woman. Amara knew one thing with terrifying certainty as she walked hand in hand with Min-jae through the glowing chaos of Seoul's nightlife. They were being followed. She didn't need to look back to feel it. The air itself seemed heavier, charged with intention. Every reflection in shop windows felt like a watching eye. Every car that slowed near them sent a jolt of fear through her chest. She forced herself to keep walking. Running now would confirm everything. "Stay close," she murmured to Min-jae, squeezing his hand gently. "And no matter what happens, don't let go." The boy nodded, his small fingers clutching hers like a lifeline. They turned into a narrow street filled with closed shops and sleeping mannequins staring blankly from darkened windows. Amara's shoes echoed against the pavement. Too loud, too exposed. Her phone vibrated again. Last warning. She didn't open the message. She turned the phone off completely and slid it into her pocket. If they wanted to find her, she wouldn't help them do it. "Where are we going?" Min-jae whispered. Amara scanned the street ahead, her mind racing. Somewhere public, somewhere crowded, somewhere unpredictable. "The subway," she said. "Lots of people." They descended into the underground station just as a train screeched into view. The doors slid open, releasing a wave of tired faces. Amara pulled Min-jae with her into the carriage at the last second, the doors slamming shut behind them. She exhaled for the first time in minutes. Across the platform, she caught sight of two men in dark jackets staring straight at her. Her breath caught. The train lurched forward, dragging them away. Min-jae leaned against her side, trembling. "They're bad men," he whispered. "I know," Amara replied softly. "But you're safe with me." She hoped the lie would become truth. They rode 3 stops, then 4. At the 5th, Amara stood abruptly and pulled Min-jae off just before the doors closed again. The platform was nearly empty. She didn't slow down, weaving through stairwells, doubling back, counting turns in her head. She had grown up navigating danger. Hunger had taught her how to move quietly, how to think ahead. Those instincts rose now, sharp and alive. They surfaced in an older part of the city, cracked sidewalks, flickering streetlights, buildings that leaned like tired men. Amara ducked into a small alley behind a closed laundromat. "Listen to me," she said, kneeling in front of Min-jae, gripping his shoulders. "If anyone grabs me, you run. You scream. You don't stop." His eyes widened. "What about you?" She smiled, though her heart hurt. "I'll catch up." She stood and peeked around the corner. A car turned slowly into the street. Another followed. They had cut her off. Amara's pulse spiked. There was no more running. Not like this. Her gaze fell on a pile of trash bags stacked near a broken fence. Glass bottles glinted under the streetlight. A loose metal rod lay half buried in debris. An idea, reckless and desperate, formed in her mind. She pulled Min-jae behind the dumpster and whispered, "No matter what you hear, don't move." Before he could protest, she stepped out into the open. The first man appeared at the end of the alley, tall and broad, a smirk already forming on his face. Another emerged behind him, then another. "Evening," one of them said in accented English. "You run fast, but not fast enough." Amara raised her hand slowly. "I don't want trouble." The man laughed. Too late for that. He stepped closer, and Amara acted. She kicked a bottle hard across the ground, the glass shattering near his feet. As he flinched, she grabbed the metal rod and swung with everything she had. It connected with his knee. He screamed. Chaos exploded. One man lunged for her. She ducked, slamming the rod into his ribs, feeling the impact reverberate up her arms. Pain shot through her wrist, but she didn't stop. Another grabbed her hair, yanking her backward. She cried out, elbowing him blindly, her heel slamming down on his foot. She wasn't strong, but she was furious. Furious at being hunted. Furious at being underestimated. Furious that they thought fear would make her surrender a child to monsters. A hand closed around her throat. Her vision blurred. Then a sharp sound cracked through the alley. A brick hit the man's head. He staggered, stunned. Amara gasped for air and saw Min-jae standing behind him, tears streaming down his face, another brick clutched in his tiny hands. "Run!" he screamed. Adrenaline surged anew. Amara grabbed him and bolted, not looking back as shouts erupted behind them. They sprinted through back streets, jumping fences, ducking between buildings until Amara's lungs burned like fire. They didn't stop until they reached an abandoned construction site, the skeletal remains of a building rising like a dead giant against the night sky. Amara collapsed behind a concrete barrier, pulling Min-jae into her arms. Both of them shook violently. For a long time, there was only silence. Then Min-jae whispered, "You're bleeding." Amara looked down. Blood soaked her sleeve where glass had cut her arm. She barely felt it. "It's nothing," she said, though her hands trembled. Min-jae touched her cheek gently. "My father has many guards," he said. "He would be angry with them." Amara gave a tired laugh. "I'm already angry enough for everyone." She wrapped her jacket tighter around him, staring out at the dark city. Somewhere out there, powerful men were closing in. And somewhere else, an even more powerful man was about to discover that the woman protecting his son wasn't trained, armed, or connected. She was just a waitress. And she was winning. Above them, the city lights shimmered, unaware that the streets had chosen sides. And for the first time since the chase began, Amara allowed herself a single thought that both terrified and strengthened her. If she could survive this night, nothing would ever scare her again. Dawn crept slowly over Seoul, painting the unfinished skeleton of the construction site in pale gray light. Amara had not slept. Every sound, the flap of plastic, the echo of distant traffic, the cry of a bird, sent her heart racing. Min-jae slept curled against her side, his breathing shallow but steady. She watched his chest rise and fall, counting each breath like it was a fragile promise. When the sun fully rose, reality set in. Daylight didn't mean safety. It meant visibility. Amara stood carefully, her stiff muscles protesting. She wrapped her jacket tighter around Min-jae and scanned the street below from the broken fence. The city was waking up, vendors setting up stalls, buses groaning to life, people rushing to work. And somewhere among them were the men who wanted the boy back. "We have to move again," she whispered, gently waking Min-jae. He rubbed his eyes. "Are they still angry?" "Yes," Amara said honestly. "But we're smarter." They slipped out of the construction site and blended into the morning crowd. Amara kept her head down, avoiding eye contact, choosing busy streets and public places. She knew predators preferred shadows. They walked for nearly an hour until her legs ached. Finally, she spotted a small church tucked between two apartment blocks. The doors were open. "Come," she said softly. Inside, the air was cool and quiet. Candles flickered. An elderly woman knelt near the altar, praying. Amara chose a pew near the back and sat, exhaustion finally crashing over her. For a moment, she allowed herself to believe they were invisible. Min-jae leaned against her. "Why don't you leave me?" he asked suddenly. Her heart clenched. "What? You could go home," he said, eyes downcast. "They want me, not you." Amara tilted his chin up gently. "Listen to me," she said. "Bad people take advantage when they think no one cares. I care." He nodded slowly, absorbing her words like a lesson he'd never been taught. Outside, a car door slammed. Amara's body tensed. Through the church window, she saw black suits. Too clean, too deliberate. Men stood across the street, scanning faces. Her blood ran cold. They had found them again. She grabbed Min-jae's hand. "We're leaving," she whispered. They slipped out the side door just as one of the men turned toward the church. The chase resumed, quieter now, more calculated. Amara darted through open markets, overturned crates, knocked over baskets of fruit to create obstacles. Vendors shouted, chaos erupting behind them. At a crowded intersection, a man stepped directly into her path. "You're making a mistake," he said calmly, blocking her way. Amara froze. He wasn't one of the kidnappers. This man wore no threat on his face. only certainty. Give us the boy, he continued. No one gets hurt. You'll be compensated. Min-jae squeezed her hand. Don't, he whispered. Amara looked the man in the eye. I don't sell children. The man sighed, almost disappointed. He raised his hand. Before he could signal the others, police sirens wailed nearby. The man stepped back, vanishing into the crowd as quickly as he'd appeared. Amara didn't wait. She ran. They ducked into an underground shopping passage and collapsed behind a closed kiosk. Min-jae trembled, his fear finally breaking through. They're everywhere, he cried. They'll never stop. Amara hugged him tightly. Then we don't stop either. She checked her phone. Still off. No signal. No help. Her eyes drifted to a TV screen mounted above the shops. Breaking news. Missing child, son of Kong Group chairman. The image flashed on screen. Min-jae's face. Amara's breath caught. The caption hit harder than any blow. Only son. Her knees went weak. This wasn't just a powerful family. This was the underworld itself. Min-jae looked at the screen, then back at her. That's my father, he said quietly. Amara swallowed hard. Everything made sense now. The resources, the reach, the relentlessness. You're very important, she said slowly. Min-jae shook his head. I just want to go home. The screen changed. Chairman Kong appeared, standing behind a podium, his expression carved from stone. My son will be returned, he said. To whoever has him, protect him. You will be rewarded beyond measure. The words echoed. Amara stared at the screen, then at Min-jae. Reward. Money. Safety. A way out. For a moment, a dangerous moment, temptation flickered. Then she remembered the rope burns on his wrists, the fear in his eyes, the way he'd thrown a brick to save her. She turned off the TV. We'll get you home, she said. But not like this. Min-jae nodded, trusting her completely. Outside, black cars began flooding the streets. The city wasn't just watching anymore. It was closing in. And Amara realized something chilling as she held Min-jae close. She wasn't just running from criminals now. She was standing between a mafia boss and his only son. And the city of Seoul was about to choose which one of them would break first. The room was silent. Not the calm kind of silence, but the kind that suffocated, pressed against the ears, warned every man inside that a single wrong breath could cost him his life. Chairman Kong Dae-sung stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse, hands clasped behind his back, staring down at Seoul like a god surveying a restless world. The city glowed beneath him, beautiful, ignorant, alive. And somewhere in that city, his son was missing. Behind him, 12 men stood in a perfect line. Each one powerful. Each one feared. None of them dared speak. Kong broke the silence. Say it again. The man in the center swallowed hard. The trackers were disabled, sir. The kidnappers lost the boy. A woman took him. Kong turned slowly. A woman, he repeated, his voice calm enough to terrify them all. Yes, Chairman. A foreigner. Black. Early 20s. No known connections. Kang's jaw tightened. For 7 years, his enemies had tried to hurt him. Assassinations. Betrayals. Wars. None had succeeded. Then they touched the one thing he never exposed. His son. You had one job, Kong said quietly. Protect Min-jae. The man dropped to his knees instantly. Please. A single gunshot echoed. The body hit the marble floor. No one flinched. Kong turned back to the window. Seal the city, he said. Airports. Ports. Highways. I want eyes everywhere. Yes, Chairman. And find the woman, Kong continued. Alive. A pause. If she is protecting my son, he added slowly, she is not my enemy. The men exchanged glances, but nodded. Yes, Chairman. Miles away, Amara felt none of this, yet. She and Min-jae hid in a cramped storage room beneath a closed beauty shop, the air thick with dust and chemical scents. She had bribed the owner with the last of her money for a few hours of silence. Min-jae sat on an overturned box, swinging his legs nervously. My father is angry, he said softly. Amara sat in front of him. Is he angry at you? Min-jae shook his head. No. He gets angry when people disobey him. She exhaled slowly. That explained everything. Outside, sirens wailed nonstop now. Not police sirens alone, but private ones. Unmarked vehicles passed constantly. Men walked with purpose, scanning faces, checking phones, speaking in low voices. The hunt had changed. This wasn't chaos anymore. It was organized. Amara peeked through a crack in the door and felt her chest tighten. Black suits everywhere. Not the kidnappers. Something worse. They're not here to hurt you, she told Min-jae, though doubt crept into her voice. They want you safe. Min-jae looked at her. Then why are they scary? She had no answer. Hours passed. Amara's phone buzzed. She had turned it back on only to check the time. An unknown number. She ignored it. Another buzz. Then a message appeared. The boy is cold. Feed him. He is afraid. Her breath caught. Another message followed. We are not the men who took him. Her fingers trembled. They knew where she was. She typed slowly. If you're not the kidnappers, why chase us? The reply came almost instantly. Because he is our world. Amara stared at the words. Min-jae leaned closer. Is it my father? I think so, Amara said quietly. Her phone rang. She hesitated, then answered. A calm male voice spoke in perfect English. Ms. Okoye. Her heart skipped. Who is this? My name is irrelevant, the voice replied. I speak for Chairman Kong. Amara closed her eyes. Yes. You are in possession of his son. I'm protecting him. A pause. We believe you. Her eyes snapped open. You do? You have refused money. You have avoided the police. You have not contacted the media. You have not harmed him. The voice softened slightly. You have done what trained men failed to do. Min-jae tugged at her sleeve. What are they saying? She muted the phone briefly. They know you're safe, she whispered. She unmuted. If you believe me, then pull your men back. You're terrifying him. Another pause, longer this time. I will relay your request, the voice said carefully. But understand this, Chairman Kong does not wait. I'm not asking him to wait, Amara said, surprising herself with her firmness. I'm asking him to trust me. Silence. Then, where can we meet? Amara's mind raced. A wrong choice here could end everything. A public place, she said. Daylight. No weapons. The voice almost chuckled. You are very brave. No, Amara replied. I'm just tired. The line went dead. Min-jae looked at her with wide eyes. Are we going home? Soon, she said. I promise. High above the city, Chairman Kong listened as the call was replayed. The woman's voice filled the room, steady, defiant, unafraid. She is not asking for anything, an advisor said. No money. No asylum. Kong said nothing. He replayed one line again. I'm protecting him. Something unfamiliar stirred in his chest. Respect. She has courage, Kong said finally. And courage is expensive. He turned to his men. Prepare the convoy. Yes, Chairman. And inform the kidnappers, Kong added, his eyes hardening. Their debt is due. In the storage room, Amara hugged Min-jae tightly as footsteps passed outside, then faded away. For the first time since the nightmare began, the city felt quieter. But Amara knew better than to relax. Because when lions stop chasing, it's not because they've given up. It's because they've decided to walk beside you. And soon, very soon, the waitress and the Mafia boss were going to meet. Face to face. The rain started just before noon. Not a storm, just a steady, cold drizzle that turned Seoul's streets into mirrors of gray. Amara stood beneath the awning of an old public library. Min-jae pressed close to her side. She could feel his heartbeat through his jacket, fast but steady. This was the place she had named. Public. Open. Nowhere to hide. Perfect. Across the street, people moved in and out of cafes, unaware that the city's most dangerous man was on his way. Amara scanned every reflection, every passing car. Her nerves hummed like live wires. A black sedan rolled to a stop at the curb. Then another. Then four more. They parked with surgical precision. Min-jae stiffened. They're here. Amara tightened her grip on his hand. Remember, she whispered. Stay with me. Doors opened in unison. Men in black stepped out, not rushing, not threatening. Controlled. disciplined. Each one scanned the area with practiced eyes. No weapons visible, but Amara felt the weight of them all the same. Then the final car door opened. Time seemed to slow. Chairman Kong stepped onto the sidewalk. He was taller than she expected, broader, dressed simply in a dark coat. No jewelry, no excess. His hair was streaked with gray, his face lined by years of command and consequence. Power radiated from him, not loud, not angry. Absolute. Min-jae gasped. Appa. The word barely left his lips before he broke free from Amara's hand and ran. Kong dropped to his knees. Right there on the wet pavement, in front of everyone, the man who ruled the underworld opened his arms and caught his son. Min-jae crashed into him, sobbing openly now. Kong held him tightly, one hand cradling the back of his head, the other pressing him close like he might disappear again. For a moment, the world held its breath. Amara watched, rain soaking into her hair, her chest aching with a strange mix of relief and loss. It was over, or so she thought. A scream cut through the air. There! Amara turned. At the far end of the street, a familiar face emerged from the crowd, one of the kidnappers. Wild-eyed, desperate, a gun in his hand. Time snapped back into motion. Gunfire exploded. People screamed and scattered. Chairs overturned. Glass shattered. Down, someone shouted. Amara reacted without thinking. She threw herself over Min-jae just as Kong spun, shielding his son with his own body. The gunshot cracked through the ring. Pain tore through Amara's side. She cried out as she hit the pavement, the world blurring. Warmth spread beneath her, mixing with rainwater. Chaos erupted. Kang's men moved instantly, 3 tackling the shooter, others forming a shield around Kong and Min-jae. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Amara lay gasping, clutching her side. Her vision swam, but she forced her eyes open. Min-jae was screaming her name. Amara, Amara. She tried to smile. Hey, she whispered. You're safe now. Kong looked up. For the first time, his eyes met hers, and something in his expression broke. He rose, handing Min-jae to an aide, and crossed the few steps to her side. He knelt beside her, pressing his coat against her wound with firm hands. Stay awake, he said quietly. Do not close your eyes. She laughed weakly. You sound like him. Like who? My father, she murmured. Kang's jaw tightened. Why? He asked, his voice low. Why did you do it? Amara met his gaze. Even now, she didn't look away. Because he's a child, she said simply. And no one was helping. The sirens arrived in force now. Police cars skidded to a halt. Paramedics rushed forward. As they lifted Amara onto a stretcher, Min-jae broke free again, grabbing her hand. Don't go, he cried. I'm not going anywhere, she said softly. I promise. Kong stood over her as they loaded her into the ambulance. You have my word, he said. No harm will ever come to you. Not in this city. Not anywhere. The doors slammed shut. Inside the ambulance, Amara faded in and out, pain and exhaustion pulling her under. But she felt it, a presence. Kong rode with her, silent, watchful. At the hospital, chaos followed. Doctors shouted. Nurses moved fast. Blood was cleaned. Wounds were stitched. Amara survived. When she finally woke, hours later, the room was quiet. A chair sat beside her bed. Occupied. Chairman Kong stood as soon as her eyes opened. You're awake, he said. She swallowed. Is Min-jae? He is safe, Kong replied. Asleep. For the first time in days. Relief washed over her. Kong bowed. Deeply. To her. My son lives because of you, he said. Everything I have is yours to ask. Amara stared at him, stunned. She shook her head slowly. I don't want everything. Kong studied her carefully. Then what do you want? Amara thought of long nights, of fear, of invisibility. I want to go home without being afraid, she said. And I want him to grow up knowing kindness exists. Silence filled the room. Then Kong nodded. It will be done. Outside the hospital window, the rain finally stopped. The city exhaled. And in that quiet moment, Amara didn't realize it yet. But she had just changed the heart of a man who had never bowed to anyone. Not until now. The morning sunlight spilled softly through the hospital window, painting warm lines across the white walls. For the first time in days, the world felt still. Amara lay awake, listening to the quiet hum of machines, the steady rhythm of her own breathing. Pain lingered in her side, dull and manageable now, but the deeper ache, the weight of everything that had happened, sat heavier in her chest. A gentle knock came at the door. Before she could answer, it opened. Min-jae stepped in. He wore clean clothes now, his hair neatly combed, but his eyes were the same, watchful, thoughtful, older than a child should be. He smiled when he saw her. "You're awake," he said softly. Amara smiled back. "I told you I wasn't going anywhere." He walked closer and held out a small paper bag. "I brought you breakfast. Appa said you like bread." Her throat tightened. "He did." Min-jae nodded proudly. "I told him everything." Behind him, Chairman Kong entered the room. He no longer looked like a man at war. His shoulders were lighter, his gaze calmer, but the power was still there, contained and focused. The door closed quietly behind him. "I will not keep you long," Kong said. "But there are things that must be said." Amara shifted slightly, wincing. "You don't have to." "I do." Kong interrupted gently. He stepped closer, stopping at the foot of her bed. "For many years," he began, "I believed fear was the strongest way to protect what I loved. I built walls of men and money and blood." His jaw tightened. "And still my son was taken." Min-jae looked down, his small hand gripping his father's coat. Kong placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Then a woman with nothing but courage stood where armies failed. He turned fully to Amara. "You refused my money. You defied my enemies. You faced my men without hatred." His voice lowered. "You reminded my son what safety feels like." Amara swallowed hard. "I didn't do anything special," she said. "I just stayed." Kong nodded. "That is rarer than power." He reached into his coat and placed a folder on the table beside her bed. "In it," he said, "is permanent residency. Citizenship if you want it. A home in any part of this city. Education. A business of your choosing. Protection that extends beyond borders." Amara stared at the folder. The old her, the tired waitress, the invisible woman, would have grabbed it without hesitation. But she didn't touch it. "Thank you," she said quietly. "But that's not why I helped him." Kang's eyes searched her face. "Then tell me what you want." Amara looked at Min-jae. He met her gaze, hopeful and scared all at once. "I want to keep being part of his life," she said carefully. "Not as something bought, just as someone he can trust." The room went silent. Kong didn't answer right away. Finally, he knelt in front of her bed, lowering himself again, not in weakness, but in choice. "My son has many guards," he said, "but very few teachers." Min-jae's eyes widened. "You saved his life," Kong continued. "Now help me save his heart." Tears blurred Amara's vision. "I'd like that," she whispered. Weeks passed. Amara healed. News outlets whispered rumors about a kidnapping, about blood in the streets, but names were never spoken. Videos disappeared. Witnesses forgot. One morning, Amara walked out of the hospital into a world that felt different. A car waited. Not black, white. Min-jae sat inside, waving excitedly. She laughed as she climbed in. Life changed in quiet ways after that. Amara no longer worked as a waitress, but she didn't forget where she came from. Kong funded shelters in foreign communities. Workers were treated better. Wages rose. No announcements were made. Min-jae began attending school like a normal child. Amara walked him there sometimes, holding his hand, blending into the crowd. At night, she taught him stories. About kindness, about courage without cruelty. And Kong watched. From a distance at first, then closer. One evening, months later, Kong and Amara stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Seoul glittered below them, vast and alive. "You could have asked for anything," Kong said. "Why choose this?" Amara smiled softly. "Because power fades. People don't." He nodded slowly. "You have changed this house," he admitted. "My son laughs now." She glanced at him. "And you?" A rare smile touched his lips. I am learning. Below them, vast and alive. You could have asked for anything, Kong said. Why choose this? Amara smiled softly. Because power fades. People don't. He nodded slowly. You have changed this house, he admitted. My son laughs now. She glanced at him. And you? A rare smile touched his lips. I am learning. Below them, Minjae's laughter echoed through the night. The city that once hunted her now protected her. The waitress no one noticed had become something far greater than rich. She had become irreplaceable. And in the underworld of men who ruled with fear, a quiet truth spread. Sometimes the strongest force in the world is a woman who refuses to walk away.